So thank you very much. This is Bob Samuels with Tech Connector and Tech Resources with another great podcast with some of my favorite marketers out there. So I wanted to make some introductions. I'm joined by my colleagues Mike and Spencer and the wonderful Jay McBain, who's and Jay and Spencer are out at this Channel Partner Expo, and we'll hear more about that. And Mike and I are remote, but Jay and Spencer, nice to see you. How are you today?
Good to see you. You're going to hear some background noise, and that's 8,000 of our closest friends walking by, but it's good. It's good stuff.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. We got
well,
yeah,
It's
a lot of
it's
action happening.
are we what's standing in between us and cocktail hour? Is that it?
Well, it's Vegas, so cocktail hours, I think 24/7 around here.
There we go.
That's true.
so
This is
if we could
true.
start with some introductions for the people that don't know you, Jay, if you can give a little introduction.
Yeah, sure. Jay McBain, chief analyst at Omdia. I spent 32 years in the channel, looking at partnerships, looking at alliances, looking at ecosystems, understanding the buyer journey, and how much of that is done in every industry around the world to, through, and with partnerships, and how that's changed, over the course of decades.
And I imagine with these days with the AI and everything, it's a whole another wrinkle.
It is.
Yeah. Spencer, if you want to introduce yourself, and Mike after that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bob, and happy to be here. My name is Spencer Bradley. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships with Tech Resources, and on site here in Las Vegas with Jay and all the other, channel partners, marketers, friends. It's been quite the show so far, and happy to be here.
Sounds like a great show, Mike.
Good, good. Well, Jay, I got you beat a little bit. 42 years in the channel in the marketing industry, serving the channel. But my first 20 years was in leading channel sales organizations. The last 4 years at PC Connection as a SVP of sales, and the last 26 years, 22 years, whatever it is, in the marketing this marketing space with serving the tech channel. So excited to hear what your analyst thoughts.
Well, you're looking good, so you must have started in the fourth grade then.
Perfect, perfect. All right, so we want to drill into a post that you did fairly recently, Jay, on the underfunding within the channel world of the demand pipeline. What does that look like? I think the percentages were like 25% versus 38% of direct sales. But so how do we get into this, and what are the ramifications, and what are the challenges, and what are the recommendations, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, just from the high level, this audience here of partners of all types. Here, there's a lot of agents or advisors, as they're called now in telco, a lot of managed service providers, but they've kind of had mostly a glorious career, as the tech industry has been the fastest growing for 56 straight years. So every single person here started their business in the fastest growing industry. And every year since, even if you've been in it for 42 years, you've been in the fastest growing industry.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got an audience here that's become a little bit lazy, and for good reason. A lot of their business has relied on word of mouth. And, your businesses in town, will chatter, and the Chamber of Commerce and things like that, they didn't have to get as into B2B marketing. They didn't have to learn enough about Google SEO, or didn't have to learn about inbound marketing, and they didn't have to learn about account-based marketing at the same pace that other B2B companies would have had to. Well, a lot of changes are going on. And, part of this research before we published that number was the bifurcation that's happened.
Hmm.
Now, this industry, still the fastest growing 56 years later, and it's growing at 10.2%. But a lot of that growth is on the high end. You look at NVIDIA and their valuation, you look at Anthropic and the good days that they're having. You look at the hyperscalers growing at 30, you look at the big SaaS companies growing at 20 to 30% this year. Infrastructure there's about $7 trillion of being invested in infrastructure to build out this AI era. But so much of that is happening direct. and it's not partner involved, is NVIDIA really has 7 customers, which is the Magnificent Seven, and they're each spending $100 billion a month buying GPUs. So this isn't, a broad-based opportunity for every partner here to capture. And so we had a survey right before that one that said over half of partners in the world, and that's about 1 million partners, over half of them think their profit is going to decline by double digits in the first quarter. And that's pretty amazing to have over half when this industry is growing by double digits and you're shrinking by double digits. So we're in this bifurcation mode where, the have and have nots. How do we address this? Because this didn't come up during the cloud era. It didn't come up during client server. Definitely didn't come up in the mainframe era. But, winners and losers are being defined differently in AI. And now we're pointing back to something you've focused on so much, which is just basic foundational marketing.
Yeah.
Understanding where partners play, foundational sales, the 28 moments that lead up to, each sale. And now this is pretty new as I presented on the main stage, here today.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a big spread between the haves and the have-nots. It's, it's caused a lot. So another thing going on is we've got millennials like Spencer that are changing the outreach methods, the outreach success and challenges and so forth. So what is the advice as far as trying to reach the millennials that are the decision makers these days?
Yeah, so this was a prediction that was pretty easy to make because it's basic demographics. So we started looking at this about 7 years ago, predicting that last year would be the tip over where our $6.07 trillion tech and telco industry, the majority buyer would now be born after 1982. And it happened. So we're kind of in our first year after that happening. But, most people don't know the differences. They assume that, baby boomers pass down to Gen X, a bunch of behavioral, psychological, journey type of things where, your service level, your support level, your price, your brand reputation, all of these things would show up in an RFP and they'd all be criterias that were scored. Well, jumping from number 7 in the criteria list to number 1 is now integrations. So you've got a buyer that's obviously digital first, digital only. You've got 90% of people today who won't buy a car unless it has Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. So this is an integration first buyer that will buy a product 80% as good as the next product if it works better in their environment. So that throws everything for a loop when you're not competing on the same things and not communicating the same ways. The second thing with a digital first buyer, there was a survey a few weeks ago where 75% of this cohort don't want to talk to a human.
Yep.
Even though every one of the 250,000 SaaS companies and the 1 million vendors that we have in our industry lead with human-based sales models, demos, and different kind of meetings that force a buyer into human-based. If they could go all 28 moments digitally and then end on a digital marketplace, which have been growing at 82% compounded, that would make their life better. And so you're adding friction to the sales model by bringing them through a baby boomer Gen X journey. And so all these changes happening at once to an audience that haven't spent enough time thinking about marketing, the science of marketing, the science of how all this works, is pretty shocking. And I think it exposes a lot of the bifurcation, the have and have nots that we're seeing.
Good point.
Yeah, and
And it's
people aren't
true.
on the phone anymore.
One thing that I think that Jay just mentioned, if coming from a millennial perspective, I'm looking to do a lot of the research up front. I want to have 80% of my decision made before I talk to anybody. And in some cases, if I'm able to take it from that 80% to that 100% without needing to talk to anybody and do it through that digital means, it saves myself time, it saves myself headaches, and it's something that it's a big shift and a change that companies need to make, and certainly companies like you said that have been under focused on that type of marketing, and it's new for everybody, but certainly in such a big market, it has to be a large focus in coming years.
So it's a shift in the focus, and then the other thing, which is AI, makes it so that I mean, at some point, my AI agent's going to be buying from your AI agent, and there won't be any people involved at all, or it's certainly, I mean, it's a streamlined sort of thing, and there's certainly good things about it, but it's also a little bit scary.
Yeah, well, it can
I
replace a lot of those moments, that we talk about, that when you're in this, LLM that understands history and understands everything about you and has read every one of your emails, every spreadsheet, every PowerPoint that you've ever delivered, is literally looking over your shoulder and watching every minute of the day. Its ability to connect you to, the vast knowledge of, kind of human wisdom says that more aggressively in the future, I'm going to go after these 28 moments digitally because I'm going to receive the value that I would have paid for in consulting or advisory, in design or architecture, in the different configuration, pricing, quoting. If you break down these 28 moments, the ability for large language models to take over more and more of these models, more of these moments as they double in size and strength every 6 months is mind-boggling, and it's pretty scary to an audience that lives, on the money they make in these services.
what did you hear from the MSPs out there? So, most of the MSPs are much smaller than some of the regional and national VARs. And a lot of them, like they don't even have someone the head of marketing.
Yeah, so
I don't know.
yeah, so MSP is a market. By the way, it's going to be $650 billion in size this year. It's actually a larger market than the SaaS industry all put together, 250,000 companies. It's also larger than all the hyperscalers put together, not just the top three, but Oracle and Alibaba and all the way down. So it's a massive market. It's also growing by double digits. So a market that size growing by double digits, you think, well, I've got this far without marketing or having to, think about its importance or build that skill, invest appropriately in it, which was that survey. Why would AI, change any of that in this market? So what we're actually hearing, from MSPs is it is changing to get in front of this new buyer, to earn, these moments of trust. And for them, the average MSP now, there's 338,000 of them, by the way, that have at least one managed contract. They're learning that, they want to get away from a margin business into a multiplier business. So if I could win the consulting, if I could win design or implementation integration, as well as the managed services, win some procurement or deployment services as well, I could earn $3 or $4 for every dollar of solution or product that the customer's buying. I get out of arguing, trying to make 10 or 20% of a deal when I'm trying to compete for 300 or 400% of it. So this is the average MSP now does 3.2 business models, and they actually don't want to be known as just an MSP. They
Right.
want to be known as somebody that shows up before, during, and after, and they want to be known as somebody that drives customer outcomes. And part of that might be, every 30 days forever in a recurring management model.
And I think small businesses are trying to figure out, how do I implement AI in my business? And that the MSP has to fill that void.
The biggest difference in AI, most people don't get this. And this is different, again, than the client server era. It's different than the cloud era, is it's highly segment based. When you look at your local restaurant that you love and everybody's running around with an iPad, they've invested in a platform, be it Toast or Square or Clover, one of those, and it runs pretty much the 100 elements of the restaurant. When there's an Uber Eats order and then the staffing, the food ordering, all the things that come together in one platform. But there's no one at your local restaurant that's going to call Sam Altman at OpenAI. They're not going to call NVIDIA to put a GPU next to the stove in the restaurant. So there's pretty much no one in SMB from 1 to 9, 10 to 24, right up to 499 that has any direct access to AI. So guess what they're going to do? They're going to wait for Toast to come with that. So if an agent sees that there's a spike in demand in Uber Eats, they're going to make sure the food order follows automatically, and then the staffing is augmented to deliver on that demand. And that's while the owner principal isn't even looking at their device. So these are the types of things that they have to wait for these big platforms. And by the way, there's 297 industries like restaurants that are going to rely on that SaaS layer. They're the ones. Toast is the one that's going to call Sam Altman and maybe buy a GPU or two, but probably even not. Now, when you get into mid-market, almost the same thing, but now you're vice presidents. Now you have 12 vice presidents, and your marketing leader has already bought into a MarTech stack. There's 15,143 companies in that MarTech or AdTech stack, according to Scott Brinker. And they bought Marketo or Eloqua or Pardot or HubSpot or whatever as a platform. They've added 6 or 7 layers to it. They're not going to buy right now another marketing AI engine that'll take over for that. They're waiting for that stack and that integration of that stack to implement AI in a way that it takes their business, their investments, their workflows, processes, and business logic to the next level. And then rinse and repeat for the CRO, for the head of HR using Workday, the head of CX using ServiceNow, and CFO using NetSuite. I mean, rinse and repeat for all your 12 vice presidents. But again, none of your vice presidents are going to call Anthropic directly. Now, not until you're in large enterprise or large government, public, is there ever going to be at that scale GPUs and infrastructure at that scale, as well as the large language models discussed directly. So again, the 8,000 people here would rarely, if ever, unless their brother or sister-in-law, happens to be well connected in one of those companies, are probably pretty rarely in those conversations. So they're going to be working at the SaaS layer, and within the tech stack, the customer's already invested in, and you're already managing, to introduce an Agentforce, a Copilot, a Now, whatever platform that comes in at that level. So again, a little different than the way we're kind of thinking about this industry as a whole.
Yep. I completely agree with that. And I think, some of the conversations that I was having earlier today were really around how all of these solutions have a story around AI, but the ones that are winning are the ones that are simplifying that story. So then the users and, the everyday average people that aren't as invested into all things AI can understand the benefit that they're going to get out of it, and also just how to use it and how to take full advantage of the use cases that these companies are bringing to market.
Yeah, so our research has 88% of customers of all sizes using partners as part of the proof of concept, as part of the AI strategy, which is good news in our world. But if you look at AI related services and go through all the layers of data and everything else, there's a 35.3% compounded growth rate in AI related services, growing to 267 billion by 2030. So of all the things you could be doing as a partner, from managed services to cybersecurity to all the things you can be selling and providing services around, this is about triple the opportunity to get involved, get in early. Again, whether it's a restaurant or a big bank, it doesn't matter. It's going to be the number one thing your customers are investing in. We know now that at the very top end, 53% of the Fortune 500 churn every 20 years. Over half of companies don't make it 20 years. And these are the richest companies that can buy their way out of problems. 71% of companies don't make it 10 years. So we're into a new 20-year AI era. When you're calling on clients that more than half of them are going to fail, these decisions they make here in 2026, the people they choose to work with, the technology they choose to invest in, and the marketing, the 28 moments that they're obsessed over, is going to create winners and losers. It's not going to be the product. It's not going to be the Super Bowl ad. It's not going to be the 4 Ps that you might have learned in college.
Wow.
So let's talk about demand gen in the channel, because that's your article was spot on from what we see and what we do, and especially though that channel community is got a very even obviously the national players have large marketing teams and know how to run lots of different marketing programs and process the MDF and so forth, but the smaller ones in my experience, it's they spend more of their dollars entertaining clients in hugging those clients for retention, and that's valuable. But less on the helping this, delivering leads to the sales team and getting that net new business.
Yeah, I mean the biggest change in the industry, and one I think why I'm invited to speak 3 times a week in Vegas now, as somebody rents out the Sphere behind the Venetian here and puts the word platform on the side, is there's a realization by boards and C-suite that partnering isn't the division over there that runs dealerships. Nobody knows what they do. They're out drinking with their partners. It's not the case anymore. So we had Salesforce, who does their annual state of sales report. The 7th one just came out a couple of weeks ago. And now 94% of salespeople around the world, every industry, every country, are using partners. 89% of salespeople don't think they're getting to club this year without partners. So we're done, 5 years ago when I declared the decade of the ecosystem, we're done, shouting from the mountaintops that, hey, partners are more than a cash register. The dealerships, the agencies, the brokers, the resellers, the retailers, the franchisees, the grocery stores, the gas stations, the pharmacies, all 27 industries use this local, hyper-local, third party. But it's more than that. It's about the 28 moments. And now there's 6.3 partners on average in every deal. In a larger deal, there might be more than 10 partners. So what we're getting to now is a new holy grail. We're getting from this MQL to SQL conversation, the early ebooks, the podcasts, the early events, and other things, creating enough of a story to move it over into an SQL to get people working on it where the customer doesn't want to work with people. Now, we're in this middle zone now that if you can start filling in that final box, which is what partners are involved, where are they in those 28 moments? And our small little analyst firm that focuses on channels got acquired by a huge buyer intent company called Informa, who actually runs this event that we're at. So in these 28 moments, why would they go and spend a bunch of money buying a channel firm? Because they realize that deals are won and lost in a considered purchase at about moment 12 out of 28. In a 6-month journey, right in the middle, the consulting, the advisory, when somebody has the pen and is drawing clouds up on a wall, labeling those clouds and connecting them together, it's not done at the point of sale. So you either win those moments or you don't. And you understand that in marketing, it's a 99% chance that you're not going to win those moments. The direct access to any vendor might be 1 or 2 of 28 in the best case scenario. And in about 90% of your TAM, you lose a deal without ever knowing there was a deal because you don't get access.
Yep.
Now, if you start to get friendly with the people who do win these 28 moments, and again, we're never going to see them all, but once you start to fill in the boxes and they share with you an early warning system. So while the customer is getting smart and reading an ebook and going to listen to a podcast like this and doing the things they do to get smart, even before that, the partners that are entering the room, the 6.3 of them, have gone closed won on an advisory consulting type of deal, getting in front of that client. So the partners are not only an early warning system, in a lot of cases, they own the moments you need. And for you to double your pipeline, it isn't more inbound or outbound marketing. It's literally going to find in your segment, in your industry, all the ideal customer that you have, literally the people in the room. And if you can collaborate and communicate with them, this creates that holy grail of sales and marketing, of getting that before your competitors do, understanding more of the moments before and taking action, maybe even agentic action on those moments before your competitors do. And this is how you become one of those 47% of winners at the end of the AI era.
Beautiful. I love it. I've got tons more questions, but good news is that we get to speak with you again in September. So I look forward to that. I want to let you wrap up, get to your next appointment, whatever. But any final words of wisdom before we let you go?
So, from my perspective, I think one thing that you had mentioned during this conversation is that you need to be proactive. One thing that is you can't sit back and wait. You need to be proactive. The teams that are that haven't done the traditional marketing that we talked about during this, then go out and build those partnerships that will get you to that next level. Talk to those partners about what they're doing with their marketing and learn from them, to try to unearth additional growth levers that they can pull on. But it's been great to connect with you, and thanks for the time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the world has moved into a team sport. And if anyone, played on a team sport, you understand that everybody has a different role. You want to get the best, people for that role and come together. So if there is this surround strategy around the customer and there's these moments that you want to, capture better than your competitors, you have to be doing the best marketing. You have to be doing the best sales, whichever way the customer wants. But until you understand the most trusted people that customer listens to and follows their advice, and you've got enough of them telling the customer to go your direction, you're not going to win. So in this world of team sports, it's about orchestration. It's about communication. It's about collaboration, sharing of data now agentically and now, automatically, as opposed to people phoning each other or sending deal registrations. And this goes for every industry, and this goes for every deal in the future. And I think that everyone is leveling up. Marketing folks, sales folks, traditional channel people, and now CX people, because 2/3 of our industry is now subscription consumption based. You got to keep winning every 30 days forever and keep enriching that. So I think we're finally at this moment, midway through this decade of the ecosystem, that is finally all coalescing. And thank goodness for AI, to drive all of this to the next level.
I love it. I love it.
Good stuff.
Mike, anything else real quick, or otherwise we'll let these guys go on. And
No, I think I agree with your analysis on that article about, the channel needs to level up their marketing and really uh, find the right formula, to be in those, as you say, those 28 moments. So as many of them as they can, and that's an interesting stat that the decision is really midpoint through, right? So too many salespeople, whether it's channel or otherwise, are looking for the low hanging fruit and not playing the long game. And you got to do a little bit of both.
We still don't do any marketing.
And marketers have to do the same thing.
So we're gonna start that. I'll probably.
I love it. Thank you guys.
Your guys.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.